One.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Marie O'Neill. I am an evolutionary astrologer trained through the Stephen Forrest Apprenticeship Program. Today, we have a special talk. Actually, every talk is special. Today, we're going to be talking about chart aspects, easy and hard. Now, when we are referring to chart aspects, we have to look at what aspects do, what they're about. I mean, why do we have aspects in the chart? So, in the training that I had and what my belief system is, everything in the chart is about integration. It doesn't matter what the aspect is, it's still about integration. The what aspects do in a chart is they're about unity. They um, they unify the chart. And so when you're looking at one aspect in a chart, you also need to take a look at the whole chart and what that aspect is telling you about the entire chart, about the individual. You can isolate the aspect, of course, to talk about specifics or specific signs, and that's good, but remember, it's still about unifying the entire chart. So, what is an aspect? An aspect is a geometrical angle between planets um, and signs, as a matter, well, signs for sure. So, we have a circle, and the circle is 360 degrees. Think of that circle as a pie. If you take one piece of that pie, that's a certain percentage of that pie taken away. If you take two or three pieces, that's another percentage. That's another way of looking at aspects. So here's something that I took from my astrology instructor years ago, Stephen Forrest. It's actually in his book, I believe it is The Inner Sky. And it says, if signs, planets, and houses are the basic words in the astrological language, then aspects are the laws of grammar and syntax that govern how those words must be hooked together. So basically, what we're saying is that, hold on, let me close my window. Sorry about that. It's pretty warm here, so I have the windows open. So if we are looking at the planets, the signs, and the houses as the words, the astrological language that we're using to describe, then the aspects are the laws of grammar. They're how we're going to talk about the planet, signs, and houses. Okay? So all aspects have a purpose, and that purpose is basically a function. They're either they're neither good nor bad aspects, and basically what they do is they help us develop our consciousness. So with aspects, the easy aspects, we say they're easy because they flow together, they flow better. But easy aspects can get us into trouble just as easily as hard aspects can get us into trouble. And this is because with the easy aspects, it's easy to sleep through them. There's there isn't that urgency to actually take action. And with the hard aspects or more difficult aspects, we must take action or we're in trouble. So let's go ahead. Oh, before we get started with going through the different aspects, let's look at the orbs. Now, I I typically use an 8-degree orb, but that's not concrete. Each person or each astrologer has an orb that works for them. 8 degrees works for me. If I'm looking at the luminaries, the sun and the moon, then that orb is going to be larger. I'm looking wider. I'm looking at 10 degrees there because they're vital planets. And I find that their energy, excuse me, I find that their energy operates over a wider span of space. So, like I said, with the sun and the moon, I use 10 degrees. In When I'm looking at a chart and I see an aspect between two planets, and that aspect is 9 degrees, I don't necessarily discount it, but I also know that the person who I'm talking to may not be feeling that aspect, that aspect because the orb is 9 degrees. When orbs get closer, meaning you get down to say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, when it gets closer, an orb, the planet or the aspect, then you're going to get more energy. You're going to really feel it. There are there are certain situations where you can feel the aspect out further. If it's with an outer planet, yeah, it's amazing because sometimes with those outer planets, you can feel that energy building at 8 or 9 degrees. And but that depends on how sensitive you are to energy. For some people, the orb has to be somewhere around 6 or 5 before they actually feel it. So that's the orb that I use. It's not a fast and solid rule, but when you're looking at a chart and you're delineating a chart, there's so much in the chart to look at. And so you don't want to overwhelm yourself or your client by, including you're having the orbs be so wide that you take in everything or most of everything in the chart. The other thing with aspects is we have major aspects and minor aspects. Today, we're going to be talking about the major aspects, and we'll include the inconjunct. One of the reasons that we're including the inconjunct, even though it's a minor aspect, is because it tends to act for me as more of a major aspect. At least that's the way I see it. All aspects are important. It doesn't matter whether you're looking at a biquintile or a semi-sextile or a semi-square, they're all important. But for the same reason that we want to narrow the orb, we also want the orb of an aspect, we want to narrow down the aspects that we actually look at. Because, I don't know about you, but if I'm giving a chart reading, I don't want to be there all day talking to the client. The client isn't going to hear after a certain period of time, and I'm going to get tired and not want to speak anymore. So I like to keep my readings down to about an hour and a half. Some astrologers will go upwards 2.5, 3 hours on a reading, and that's fine. This is just for me. This is what I do. So let's get started with the first aspect. And the first aspect that we're looking at is the conjunction. And here, of course, it says 10 or less degrees, and that's as far as the orb is concerned, and that's fine. You see the little glyph out there. to your left, right next to the Aries, which gives you the glyph for the conjunction. And a conjunction is two planets that are side by side, and um, they're like I said, within 10 degrees. What happens with a conjunction is one planet affects the other planet. They're fused. They work in conjunction with each other. They cannot be separated. And it actually makes for a very strong signature in a chart, because where you have one planet operating and it has its power, now you have two. And that power is doubled or tripled. Well, not tripled, but doubled. So, excuse me, they basically cannot function separately. They have to function together. They're fused. So they flavor each other. And to think about your chart, and if you have conjunctions there with between two planets, and how that conjunction works. If you're going to activate one, you're going to activate the other. It's impossible not to. Now, um, not all conjunctions are created equal, just like not all, well, really not all aspects are created equal. What happens is sometimes you can have a conjunction between two planets that are in the wrong signs. So if you look at this chart, suppose you have, now each sign is 30 degrees. And so we've got 30, 30 goes into 360 12 times. So that's how we get the circle, and that's how it's divided. The circle is divided by 12 and we get 30, 30 degrees. So say you have here Aries, and Aries is at the beginning of Aries. It's at, say, 1 degree or 2 degrees of Aries. You've got, say, Mars in Aries there. And then you have, say, you have Jupiter in Pisces at the tail end. Maybe you have Jupiter in Pisces at 29 degrees of Pisces. Well, that's Pisces and that's Aries. They're side by side in a conjunction. So they are conjunct. It makes that conjunction a little weaker, though, because they're in different signs. Each sign, the function, or each sign basically takes the information and wisdom from the previous sign and brings it forward. So each sign has a different function. If you get a conjunction in the same sign, that's really powerful. So hopefully that is pretty clear. So yeah, that's a conjunction. Now let's move on to the sextile. And with a sextile, we're looking at 60 degrees. So that's two signs. 2 signs away gets you that sextile. So if you look at this chart, your sextile is going to be between Aries and Gemini. That's because you have Aries 30 degrees, and you have Taurus another 30 degrees, and you come to that 60-degree point, and then you have a sextile. Remember, with the orbs, you still have to look at the orb. And if you're looking at a 10-degree orb or 8-degree orb, that's going to tell you how far into Gemini, that's going to tell you the orb between Gemini and Aries. So for example, if you have Aries at, say, 15 degrees, so you have Gemini and Aries at 15 degrees, and you come along and you have you might have, mm, let's see, you could have Neptune in Gemini. I mean, that would be, yeah, you could have that. And you have that at, say, 18 degrees. Then you have a 3-degree orb, so you still have a sextile going on. So with the inclination with the sextile is towards friendship. This is interesting because it's like juveniles or um, teenagers who just meet each other, and their inclination, they want to get together, they want to have friendship, and they usually do. But and the purpose here is excitation. So it's very intense. It's a very intense energy, and it's very colorful and dynamic. It's wonderful energy. So they stimulate each other, and that's the purpose. The thing with the sextile is you can get bored with the sextile because you come together, you have this energy at the beginning, and then it peters out. So you have to keep that energy going with the sextile. So say you have, let's see, yeah, so you have Gemini. What is Gemini about? Gemini is about information, and it's like an information junkie. And then you have, say, Leo. Looking at this chart here, you have Leo. And what is Leo about? Leo wants to express itself. It's expressive. That's what it's about. So you get Leo wanting to give Gemini information. So Gemini is receiving, but at some point Gemini gets tired of receiving all this information, and it decides to stop, because Leo is, of course, about self-expression, and so it's giving this information to Gemini. At some point Gemini says, I'm tired of this information, I've had too much, I'm on overload. So Gemini tunes out, and then Leo feels down. It feels that it's not loved. It doesn't have. It's not able to do what it wants to do. So both planets are stimulated into action. That's the point with the sextile. It's always about action. But that action can flare up without purpose or direction. So with the sextiles, with any of these aspects, it's much better if you approach them consciously. If you sit down and look at your chart with the purpose of getting to know those planets and signs in aspect, and looking at what it is they want from each other, so that you can work with them. And it takes trial and error. What I have found over time is it becomes a natural inclination to know what the energy is when it presents itself to you, and you then know how to work with it. For example, with the sextiles that I have in my chart, I know that I'm going to get a sharp bout of energy, a burst of energy between these two planets. And I utilize that short burst. So I know, oh, I need to initiate during these, what I want to do. And I set myself up to succeed, to keep going. So I enlist the help of other people, like being in a mastermind group, for one thing. So it's like, oh, I want to create this company, or I want to create this project. Well, I have a mastermind group of people who I get together with on a weekly basis, who keep me going, so that the energy doesn't fizzle out. Or even if it starts to fizzle out, my friends can keep me going. That's how I work with That's how I work with the sextiles in particular. That's how I work with my entire chart, as a matter of fact. But that works really well for me. And maybe it'll work for you. The next aspect that we're going to be talking about is the square. This is 90 degrees. So it is, remember, you've got 30, 60, 90. So you're looking, if you're looking at Aries, your square is going to come in with either Cancer on one end or Capricorn on the other. With the with the square, we're really looking at the modes. And you may know what a mode is. If you don't, mode, I'll tell you. Modes are whether are cardinal, fixed, or mutable. So with your cardinal signs are um, well, let me back up a little bit. This is how I learned the modes. I learned them using the seasons, our seasons that we have. We have four distinct seasons. We have spring, summer, fall, and winter. The cardinal signs initiate, and that would be spring, would be Aries, summer initiated by Cancer, fall initiated by Libra, and winter initiated by Capricorn. This is in the tropical system. So with the squares, they produce friction, and there is no basis for mutual understanding. And the reason I brought in the seasons is because the purpose of spring is different than the purpose of summer, or the purpose of winter to the purpose of fall. Their purposes are different. So this is going to bring in the friction when you get cardinal signs or fixed signs or mutable signs um, coming together. And I'm just using cardinal as an example. So there's no basis for mutual understanding. There's no common ground or language. Their purposes are crossed, as I said before. The behavior of one perplexes the other. Isn't that amazing? Look at Gemini and Pisces. They're mutable and their purpose is different. So if cardinal is to initiate, Gemini, the mutable signs are the transition signs. So your mutable signs are going to be Pisces, Gemini, Virgo, and Sagittarius. Yes, they're your mutable signs. And they're the transition points. They're the middle. They're like the middle child, so to speak. Because they're in between well, they're not in between. They're not the middle child, they're the in child. So you have the cardinal, and then you have fixed, and then you have mutable. So you've initiated, you've stabilized with the fixed, and then you're starting to shift again. You're starting to shift with the mutable. So hopefully that's clear. So with this, what you get are the two planets vying for control of the personality. That's what's happening. And so that's why we have the friction. So the square exerts relentless developmental pressure on each planet. And that is the goal. You want to develop. Each planet wants to develop. Each sign wants to develop. And this is why we have this friction. And that's a good thing. So both planets must evolve to survive. It's not about, you're not looking to resolve a square because they're not resolvable. You're looking to grow and develop each sign. So this is so that we hopefully get stronger as an individual. But if one sign wins over the other, that's going to mean that the loser is going to be more passive and dysfunctional. And you'll see that showing up in people's lives. You can tell with a square, if you're looking at a person's chart and you're talking to them, you can kind of tell which planet is ruling over the other. Hopefully they're both ruling, but anyway, what happens is something goes out of the person, something vital goes away, and the person has to fight to get that back. They have to fight to rebuild the the energy of and the strength of that particular planet. So what you see is repeated failure around that particular planet and how it's manifesting. And you of course have to look at the planet, the sign, and the house to give you that information. But yeah, that is a square. But we all need them, and we grow because we have friction. We don't really, we have choice. We always have choice. But if we don't work it, one of those planets is going to be dominant and the other one isn't. So that is the square. Make sure I'm on time here. Oh, my goodness. All right, so we are moving on to the trine. And the trine is 120 degrees. And, you know, so that's going to be 4 signs away. And you see the little glyph there down there by Cancer, showing you what the trine is. And trines, we consider them good aspects, and they are. However, they can turn bad. And so let's take a little deeper look at the trine. So what happens if you have 2 people who are in a marriage? And I've heard this before, and I'm sure you have too, where they say, oh my goodness, we never argue, we never fight. Really? Okay, maybe you don't. But is that a good marriage? I mean, are there underlying issues that you've never discussed? You know, is there something festering there? That can be the function of a trine. So they can sour a marriage quicker than the squares and the oppositions because they are just flowing. They're so easy, and easy doesn't mean good. There's no, so things have a chance to build and fester. So that's something to keep in mind with a trine. So basically it all depends on, with the trine, it all depends on how we choose to respond. We really need to be active with trines. We have to use our will and our determination. It has to be almost forceful to work. It has to be conscious to work with a trine, because if not, it's just going to lay flat. Trines mean harmony, and their nature and goal between the 2 planets, it may be different, but they're allies. And with a trine, you're looking at elements. So we're looking at water, fire, earth, and air as the elements. Your fire signs are going to be Sag, Aries, and Leo. So the Aries, the purpose of Aries is different than the purpose of Sag. And the purpose of Sag is different than the purpose of Leo. However, they're still allies. and they're going to help each other. And that's okay, but you can have an issue of lack of perspective with each of these planets. So the thing with trines is to see them as representing areas of life with almost unlimited potential for growth. There's basically an alliance of the mind with the trine, so you can use them. But like I said, because there isn't any friction, the energy can be wasted, and you don't want that energy wasted. The energy can be latent, and it must be awakened through the active will and self-discipline. It's the only way to work with, well, it's the best way to work with a trine. And if we succeed in working with a trine consciously, then that trine can um, take us much further than any of the other aspects can, because it flows so easily together. So that is a trine. My favorite, being facetious here, my favorite aspect, let's look at the opposition. And it's pretty self-explanatory here what an opposition is. It's the opposite sign. We have to have oppositions. I mean, life, well, they help each other, the opposition. So this is two planets that are polarized. They are irreconcilable. And so there's tremendous energy with each planet, which equates to tremendous tension between these planets. And it's an either or situation with an opposition. Um, so, for example, let's look at Taurus in Scorpio. What is Taurus all about? Taurus wants to relax, it wants calm, and Scorpio wants energy. It wants to go, it wants to have intensity. That's opposite ends of the spectrum with those two signs. However, it's perfect because Scorpio can only be intense so long. It needs to relax and calm down. So the Scorpio really needs to go to the Taurus end of things to have some relaxation. Taurus, on the other hand, can relax and enjoy life without doing anything. It needs Scorpio to give it some intensity so that it can actually get things done. So the tension really between them is invaluable. It's where we get our greatest growth in consciousness through, well, one of the greatest areas or aspects is the opposition. So there's two sides, of course, of the same coin. And the key to integration is to hold both halves of the polarity in consciousness simultaneously, coming up with a compromise. And therein lies the issue. It takes time. It takes a lot of time and a lot of work and a lot of being conscious of these aspects to have them work optimally. An opposition, um, I look at an opposition as a great diplomat, someone who can take two opposing sides and have them come together to work together. So you do need to come up with compromise, even though it still is an either or. So in the way you use that compromise is if you're operating, say, under the Aries, where you've got this Shakti, this energy, you just want to go, go, go and drive forward. you got to know internally when it's time to, say, walk the middle path with the Libra. Um, and Libra has to know when it's time to pull in the Aries. It's a dance. I mean, all of the aspects are a dance, but with an opposition, you really have to pay attention and dance with the opposition. So, what happens if we get it wrong? Well, if we get this opposition wrong, we're going to vacillate back and forth, back and forth. One sign or one planet has control, and then the other planet has control. And that isn't optimal. And it's not a fusion. We're not looking for fusion here because there's this tension and it's natural tension. What I find is when I feel into um, when you are conscious of the opposition and what it feels like within you, then you can work. You work one side, and when that side, you can start to feel when it's time for the other side to actually work. I hope I'm making myself clear on that. Um, so yeah, so that's really important. So we gain flexibility and variety and adaptability with a trine. Those are keys. Now, this is the quincunx. And um, a lot of people aren't as familiar with the quincunx. And this one, I actually love the quincunx. So look at when you think about Quin, which is Quin, Quin implies the number 5. And this is where things get uncomfortable in astrology because we are looking at 12 signs and we're being asked, we've got a base 12 system because we've got 12 signs. And now we're asking to divide 12 by 5. That's where it gets complicated. And so, for example, we look at Aries here. Aries is quincunx to Virgo, and it's like it's slightly off. But let's go back to the number 5. So, do you know what else is significant about the number 5? It's the pentangle, pentangle really, that is traced in the sky by the successive inferior conjunctions of Venus with the sun. And this is done over a period of about 8 years, where we get the star in the sky. It's the Venus star. And there's books written on the Venus star. But Venus, what is Venus about? She's about relationship and creativity. And this is the number 5. So by relating the quincunx to Venus, we basically get clues as to what the quincunx is all about. So the fundamental way of looking at a quincunx is it is Venusian. You might not have heard that, but it is. Its symbolic orientation is towards creativity and relationship. It's commonly seen in passionate relationships and artistic partnerships. So you want to have the quincunx because you've got to fight with a quincunx to see the other. I mean, if you look at Aries, Aries automatically wants to go to the sextile, the square, the opposition. it takes work to get to that quincunx, to actually see it. And this is where the passion lies. So let's go over some of the key concepts supporting the integration of the process of the quincunx. So adjustment, which you have to adjust, crossing the abyss created by different root assumptions. So you've got the assumption of Aries versus the assumption of Virgo, and there's an abyss between them, and they have to cross that abyss to work together, or they won't work together. So you have the same words that have different meanings. Another way of putting it is, say you have a visual thinker communicating with an audio kinesthetic thinker. You could have a feeling type person communing with a thinking type person. So you would think outside the box. You have to, because there is no box. And you have creative bursts with the quincunx. So these are the major aspects that we've been looking at today. This is a wheel. So now if you look at this wheel, you can find the squares. So you've got Aries. Remember, Aries is a fire sign. So if you're looking for the conjunction, you're going to go to either Capricorn or Cancer. And it's a fire sign, but it is a cardinal sign too. So you're going to look at the cardinal signs there. Remember, one is going to be an opposition. So no matter where you look, for example, if you look at Taurus here, Taurus is a fixed earth sign, but you're going to be looking for fixity here. And so you've got Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. Those are going to be your fixed signs, and they're going to be square each other. Then you're looking at your sextiles. So you would have the Aries to Gemini, or Aries to Aquarius. So what you have here, to hopefully make it a little bit easier for you, fire and air get along very well. Water and earth get along very well. So if you're looking at water and fire are next to each other. So they're not natural, they don't naturally get along, because if you're looking at water and fire, water is going to fire is going to heat up water. What water does is it douses the fire. So anyway, that's one way of looking at it. Let's see. So with the conjunction, let's talk about how you recognize aspects with looking at the chart again. Conjunctions are next to each other, side by side, within about a 10-degree orb, although I use 8 degrees with the exception of the luminaries, which I use 10 degrees for that. The opposition is opposed, as in, say, Aries and Libra. They're opposite. Trines, you want to remember the elements here. So you've got fire, air, water, and earth. So that when you remember the elements, that'll make it easier for you to remember the trines. With the squares, you have to look at the modes. And with the modes, we're looking at cardinal, fixed, or mutable, basically. And of the 3, we're going to have 1 opposing and 2 in square. So another way to look at aspects is you can count. You can count the houses, and that'll tell you. So 1 is going to be conjunction. 2, next side by side, there's no aspect. 3 is a sextile, 4 is a square, 5 is a trine, and 6 is an opposition. Remember, signs are 30 degrees. And yeah, so that is the aspects, and aspects occur, like I said, aspects can occur between wrong signs. And if they do, it's going to make them weaker, but they're still in aspect with each other. They're just functioning a little bit weaker than they would if they were in the signs that are true to that particular mode or element. So anyway, yeah, that's aspects for you. Do you have any questions? Linda, are there any questions?
I'll just have a look. 1 second.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
Okay, Marie, we don't have any questions.
We don't. Okay.
But
All right.
oh, well, look, I'll have a little question here. I like what you said about the 8-degree orb that you use versus the 10-degree. Now, if it was a really tight orb, the issues would be more conscious.
Yeah. Well, okay.
Or does it indicate?
Well,
Go
the
ahead.
issue
Sorry.
would certainly be up. I mean, you couldn't not. I mean, you really could not see them. The issue would be right in front of you. However, do you have any conjunctions in your chart?
I actually don't. And
Ah,
that's another good question. No, I don't.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, because with the orbs, I find that the closer they are, the louder they are. For example, in my chart, I have a Venus Moon conjunction. I have to consciously think about Venus or consciously think about the moon because if one is active, the other one is active because they're within 2-3 degrees of each other. So it's virtually impossible for me to separate their energy, and they're very powerful because they're so close together. Um, and I find that with orbs, they work a little bit differently in the solar arc charts, the solar arcs, progressive charts, and transit charts. And that's because the transit charts move faster. And when I'm looking at the outer planets, I look at the transiting outer planets. With the personal planets, they move so fast that sometimes you don't have time to really even think about the energy that is coming up within you. I mean, you think about the moon. I mean, the moon takes uh, 27, 28 days to get around the chart, and it's moving so fast that you may feel something, but it's gone within a day or so. It's moved on because the aspect has separated um, or it's gone away. Um, and with the reason that I find, well, with the solar arc charts and the progress charts, the aspects move so slow that they have a lot of time to work in the person's life. So with that, I actually would use a tighter orb. I know for example, I know one of the things that is good is to use, say, a 2.5 or 3 degree orb with the progressions and solar arcs, because you're looking at 2.5 years there versus say 8 years or 9 years. I mean, you're not really not going to feel it if it's 8 years out. I mean, you might, but do you really want to? Because that's a long time. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you so much. And I also loved what you said about the quincunx, the inconjunct, in relation to the Venus star. And I just wanted to mention that there are 5 points at 75 degrees apart all around the whole wheel. So
Yeah,
very nice Venusian effect with that.
it is. And a lot of people don't realize that the inconjunct is really, it is about relationship and passion, because it's related to Venus. Um,
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we see it as related to crisis because of the Virgo, but it's also Venus. So blending those two archetypes together, what do we get?
yeah, you know, you know, I like to look at the purpose of relationship. And, you know, my belief is a little different than I assume most people when it comes to relationship. Relationships are about helping each other develop consciousness and grow. And if you don't have any friction in the relationship, I question how well you're actually growing your consciousness. And that's because we live on the earth, and earth is a school. So in school, we're learning. And unfortunately for us, a lot of us learn through friction. It's not impossible to learn through love or through non-friction. It's just that we have apathy when things are just going so smoothly. Um, I mean, what do we remember? We usually remember the difficult times more than we do the good times. And when have we had the largest growth spurts? Usually it's during times of friction. So,
Right. Well, that kind of answered my last question, which is there are people that blame the transits. You know, any final comment on that?
you know, I don't blame transits for anything. What happens with transits is they bring up from our subconscious a lot of times into our conscious mind something that we need to work on within ourselves. It's really, I mean, because think about it, there are transits that go by without the person feeling anything externally. It's going on internally and they don't feel it. So if you're triggered by a transit, it's because it's something that you need to work on or something you need to experience. There is no blame here. This is about our own conscious development. And this is why we have the chart. And remember, the chart, there is no such thing as a bad chart or a good chart. I mean, I see people say, "Oh my God, I've got all these squares and oppositions, and my chart is bad and it's horrible, and look at that, and it's debilitated and all this." Well, we of course have to be careful about the language that we use when we talk to people. But in evolutionary astrology, the whole question is, why do we have the chart we have? And it's for our evolution. Our evolutionary intention that is driving the chart that we have. So it's neither bad nor good. It just is, and we need to work with what we have.
Excellent answers. Loved it. Love this meeting. Thank you so much, Marie. And
You're welcome.
yes, and we're looking forward to seeing you next time very soon, I hope.
Yes, and before I go, the slides, I did get them from Indigo Ray Astrology online. And of course, here's my information. If anyone is wanting a reading or wanting to chat, give me a call or email me.
Great. Excellent, Marie. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Yes, we will. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.